Kyle held Valeria close beneath the quiet glow of the twin moons. The snow had settled around them, soft and pure, as if the world itself was waiting for what would come next. Her breath was shallow, her body fragile, but her eyes told a different story, one of fire, hope, and something far greater than either had imagined. He whispered words he had never dared to say before. "I would burn every moon in the sky just to keep you here." His hand trembled as it brushed her hair back from her face. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his lips to hers, a kiss gentle as the falling snow, fierce as the storms they had survived. The moment their mouths met, a warmth spread from the touch, traveling through them like a river of light. Valeria's eyes fluttered open wider. The golden and crimson glow deepened, surrounding them both in a radiant aura. The ice beneath them began to thaw, water trickling between stones, the air filled with the scent of earth and new beginnings. The moons above seemed to pulse in time with their hearts, casting beams that reached down like blessings. The old laws, the ones that had divided wolves and vampires for centuries, were breaking. In that moment, a new covenant was forged, not of blood spilled in hatred, but of trust sealed in love. Valeria sat up slowly, the strength returning to her limbs. She looked into Kyle's eyes and saw not just a protector, but a partner, someone who had walked beside her through shadow and fire. "This is our beginning," she said softly, "not just for us, but for all who come after. Those who will no longer be bound by fear, but by choice." Kyle nodded, the weight of the future settling on his shoulders. "We will lead them, not as enemies, but as one." The Frostvale night was still, the silence filled with promise. Together, they stood and faced the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to touch the sky. Their journey had been born from secrets and shadows, but it would continue in the light. The twin moons, once feared and hated, now shone as symbols of unity and hope. And as the world slowly awakened around them, Valeria and Kale stepped forward, bound by love, strengthened by truth, and ready to rewrite the stories told beneath the stars. Their legend would echo for generations, a tale of fire and frost, of moonlight and blood, of two souls who dared to defy the past and create a new dawn. The end, but also a beginning.
The twin moons hung low in the sky, their pale light casting long shadows over the ancient vale of Daramir. Once a land of peace between the vampire highborn and the werewolf tribes, it now lay silent, broken by the echoes of betrayal. Stone monuments crumbled under ivy, and forgotten altars stood as reminders of a time when the two races shared more than hatred. Now, the scent of ash and blood lingered in the air. Through the ghostly forest moved a figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with a stride that betrayed both pain and power. He was Kalen, last of the Direfang pack, his chest marked with the faded sigil of his people. Silver wounds glowed faintly on his side, reminders of the ambush he barely escaped. Each step left behind a crimson trace, but still he moved forward, driven by something deeper than survival. He was searching for something, or someone, not far from there, within the ancient ruins of the Moonshade Library. A young vampire noble sat in quiet study. Velmira, daughter of the Elder Council, had long questioned the old stories. She read not from the scrolls of power or war, but from human writings. She found humor in their strange idioms and wordplay. Lately, one phrase had puzzled her: doggy style. To her, it sounded odd, perhaps a joke or a metaphor. She laughed it off, never imagining it held a deeper meaning outside of human jest. The first crossing of their paths came without warning. Velmira left the safety of her tower that night to gather a rare herb from the shadow fields. Beneath the black trees, she saw him, Kalen, collapsed near a stream, barely breathing. Instinct urged her to flee, but curiosity held her still. His aura was unlike anything she had known. Wild, yes, but also sorrowful. And beneath the dirt and blood he was familiar. She approached cautiously. "You're wounded," she said, though he didn't respond. Only his golden eyes moved, studying her as though he already knew her name. Against her better judgment, she helped him. She tore cloth from her robe to dress his wounds and whispered a healing chant from her mother's spellbook. His skin was hot to the touch, and as she leaned closer, she noticed something strange. His blood smelled of lavender and storm wind. Not normal for any werewolf. As he drifted into sleep, Velmira sat beside him, unsure of what she had just done. She had touched a werewolf, an enemy, and saved his life. But the strangest part was how her heart felt lighter, her chest warmer, as if a piece of her had always waited for this moment, in the quiet of the night. As moonlight filtered through broken branches, the wind carried a single haunting howl, not of pain, but of destiny. And neither of them knew yet, but their story had already begun. Morning never truly touched the Vale of Deramir. Even when the suns rose beyond the twin moons, the land remained cloaked in cool mists and the smell of damp stone. Deep within Velmira's tower, high above the ruins, the young vampire noble paced in silence. Below her, in the stone chamber, once used for quiet meditation, the werewolf rested, shackled by enchanted silver chains just strong enough to keep him bound, just fragile enough to tempt fate. Kaelin had not spoken since she brought him here. He watched her with calm, patient eyes, as if waiting for something she did not yet understand. Velmira had grown up believing werewolves were creatures of instinct, driven by hunger and fury. Yet this one remained composed, even wounded. He did not flinch nor snarl. He studied her, and that unsettled her more than any rage would have. She brought him food laced with healing roots, watched as he ate without gratitude, yet without resentment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and measured. "You should hate me," she said. "My kind hunted yours." He nodded once. "You saved me. So I do not hate you. Not yet." His voice surprised her. Deep but soft, with no threat in it. She folded her arms, standing near the old spell mirror that hadn't shown her reflection in years. "I didn't do it out of kindness," she said. "I wanted to learn something." "Then learn," Kaelin replied. "But do not lie to yourself. Something in you knew this meeting mattered." That made her pause. She tried to laugh it off. "You sound like an old story." "Perhaps we are in one," he said simply. She spent the next day questioning him. About the Direfang pack, about the war, about the betrayal. What he said didn't match the tales she had grown up with. He spoke of a blood accord, an oath of peace broken not by wolves, but by the vampire. Lords when greed for territory grew. Velmira, trained in politics and pride, wanted to argue, but she had no proof to deny him, and deep within she sensed he spoke the truth. Still, she tried to keep the distance. "Do you even know what manners are?" she asked one night when he challenged her view on honor. "Manners," he said with a slow smile, "are the way cowards use words instead of action." She turned away, cheeks strangely warm. Barbarian. Princess. The tension between them grew, not like fire, but like tide. Steady, creeping, impossible to ignore. Then, on the night of the full moon, the silver chains broke. Not from force, but from her mistake. She had leaned too close, her fingers brushing his chest to check his wound, and the chains snapped as if they had never held him. He didn't flee, he didn't strike. Instead, he knelt before her, not as a servant, but as someone offering something ancient, something powerful, something only the heart could recognize. Velmira stood frozen in the center of the chamber, her breath caught between disbelief and wonder. Kaelin had knelt before her, not as a prisoner seeking freedom, but as one presenting a vow. There was no fear in his posture, only calm strength and a strange reverence that made the cold stone room feel suddenly warm. She took a step back. "Why, are you doing this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kaelin raised his eyes. "Because the bond has already begun." She didn't understand, at least not fully. Yet as she turned toward the old mirror hanging on the far wall, a flicker of something unfamiliar passed through her. No reflection greeted her, as always, but her eyes, her usually sharp, silver-tinted eyes. now pulsed faintly with golden rings. Her pupils had narrowed just slightly, and her skin, it felt warmer than before, more alive. She ran to her private chambers and locked the door behind her. Panic stirred in her chest. She had been taught that vampire purity was sacred, that any shift toward mortal or beast nature was a sign of corruption. Her heartbeat, once a silent rhythm, now thudded in her ears. She could feel the weight of it, real, raw, and alive. The bond Kalen spoke of was more than metaphor. His presence, his nearness, had started to change her. She searched through old spellbooks, scanning page after page until she found an ancient passage once banned by the council. It told of an ancient rite. When a vampire and a werewolf shared a moment of vulnerability, a soul link could be formed. Such a link would change both forever, awakening dormant aspects of their bloodlines. It was once considered sacred, but after the Blood War, it had been declared heresy. Velmyra clenched her hands. Her skin burned faintly, as if resisting her thoughts. Part of her wanted to sever the link to reclaim her place among the nobles. But the other part, deeper and quieter, longed to return to Kalen's calm presence. She remembered the way he looked at her, not with hunger or fear, but with recognition. Outside, the twin moons began to rise. Light filtered into her tower window, soft and silver. Drawn by something unspoken, Velmyra returned to the lower chamber. Kalen stood there, now unshackled yet unmoving. He looked at her without judgment. "You feel it too," he said. She didn't deny it. They stepped closer, neither speaking, as if words could no longer carry the weight of what passed between them. He reached out, gently brushing her wrist with his fingers. Her body tensed, not in fear, but in unfamiliar warmth. "This connection," Velmyra whispered. "It is dangerous." "So is the truth," Kalen replied. "But it cannot be hidden, forever." They stood in silence beneath the light of the moons. Two souls once meant to oppose each other, now drawn by something older than war, older than bloodlines. A bond neither of them asked for, and neither of them could now escape. The twin moons reached their highest point in the sky, casting an ethereal glow across the veil. One moon gleamed soft and silver, the other burned a deep crimson. It was a rare alignment known as the blood moon convergence. A moment whispered about in the oldest vampire scriptures and howled for in ancient werewolf songs. Legends said it awakened bonds and truths that could not be hidden. Velmyra and Kalen stood at the edge of the hollow spines, a jagged cliff range where the bones of forgotten creatures once buried long truths. They had traveled far from the tower, away from watching eyes and condemning voices. The air was thin, the wind cold, and yet Velmyra's hands felt warm in Kalen's. Neither spoke much on the journey, but silence had begun to feel like understanding between them. The change within Velmyra deepened. Her senses sharpened, and her emotions, once tightly controlled, now moved freely, like wild rivers breaking through ice. Kalen watched her closely, never forcing, always steady. He knew the signs. He had seen them once before in his youth, in a tale whispered by his mother. It told of a vampire who walked beside a werewolf during the blood moon and became more than either. As they reached the top of the cliff, a stone circle marked with ancient runes lay waiting. Velmyra stepped toward it, her eyes drawn to the markings. "This place," she said. "I've seen it before, in dreams." Kalen nodded. "It's the place of the rite, when two become one in spirit, and the past is no longer the path." Velmyra looked into his eyes. "This rite, it will change us." "It already has," he said quietly. "But it will reveal more." They stood in the center of the circle. Moonlight bathed them. The wind paused, as if the land itself held its breath. Velmyra closed her eyes and raised her hands. Kalen did the same. Their fingers met, and a soft light grew between their palms. Then came a pull, a deep sensation within both of them, as if roots were tying their souls together. It was not painful. It was overwhelming. Their memories flashed through each other's, minds, His lonely forest childhood, her cold palace upbringing, his pack's last stand, her silent rebellion against the council's rules. Then the circle lit with soft blue fire, not flames to burn, but to purify. The ritual was complete. Velmira opened her eyes and they glowed with a new hue, neither gold nor silver but something in between. Kaelin stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her cheek. "What are we now?" she whispered. "Something new," he replied. "Something that has no name yet." In that quiet moment, surrounded by old stones and old stars, they understood something the world had forgotten. That when two hearts meet beyond fear, beyond names, even the skies must make room. For their bond, the rite had not just been reborn, it had chosen them. The wind shifted after the rite. It no longer whispered warnings through the trees but hummed with a strange reverence, as if the land itself had accepted what had happened atop the cliffs. Velmira and Kaelin descended in silence, their hands occasionally brushing. Something had changed, not just in them but around them. Every step they took felt heavier with meaning. But peace was not waiting for them. As they reached the lowlands, Kaelin felt a tremor in his chest. The blood moon, rite had awakened more than just their bond. It had stirred the old magic that slept in his veins, magic that the vampire elders once feared. Velmira, too, sensed the shift. Her connection to the council was weakening. She could no longer hear the distant calls of her kind. Instead, her thoughts were filled with glimpses of the past and a growing pull toward something ancient. They camped beneath a hollow tree that night, lit only by the glow of moss and starlight. Kaelin told her of a place called the Necrospire, a tower buried in shadow where the Cryptex Fang was kept. It was a relic older than their war, said to hold the power to anchor or dissolve a soul bond. "Why go there?" Velmira asked softly, her cloak wrapped around her shoulders. "Because the bond we carry now burns," Kaelin said. "Each time we draw closer, it strengthens. But it also threatens to consume us unless balanced." She looked down at her wrist, where a mark had begun to form, a small spiraling sigil that pulsed faintly under her skin. "I can feel it, too," she admitted. "Like fire waiting to grow." They left before dawn. The Necrospire stood beyond the Deadlands, where the trees had turned to ash and the ground no longer grew life. Legend said the tower once belonged to a guardian order that watched over both vampire and werewolf secrets, before the order vanished without a trace. As they approached, the air grew colder, and a strange silence settled around them. The entrance was guarded by 2 stone sentinels, statues with hollow eyes and crossed swords. Velmira placed her hand on the runes between them and the stones shifted, opening a path into the dark. Inside, they faced 3 trials. The first trial was of memory. Visions of their past flooded the chamber, forcing them to relive moments of pain and doubt. Velmira saw her childhood loneliness. Kaelin saw the night his pack was hunted. They stood through it together. The second trial was of trust. They were separated and asked questions meant to turn them against each other, but neither betrayed the other's truth. The third trial was of sacrifice. They were asked to give up something dear. Velmira cut a strand of her bloodline's crest from her cloak. Kaelin placed his father's pendant on the altar. The way forward opened. They had passed the trials, but as they stepped into the relic chamber, the Cryptex Fang shimmered, waiting, watching, and its price had yet to be revealed. The moment they emerged from the Necrospire, the air itself seemed to hum with change. Velmira and Kaelin walked side by side, footsteps echoing on cobblestone paths that had once been trod by 1,000-year-old secrets. Their bodies still bore the marks of the trials, faint scars glowing where blood had fallen on cold stone. They had claimed the Cryptex Fang, but what they held now felt both a blessing and a burden. As they reached the forest of obsidian pines, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Distant howls and bat-winged cries converged, weaving into a single thunderous roar. It was as if the world itself recognized what was unfolding. 2 souls, bound by right, ascending beyond mortal lineage. Velmira's senses burned brighter than ever. She could hear the flutter of a moth's wings and taste the iron in Kaelin's sweat as he drew near. Kaelin's strength felt infinite. He could feel the sap of the oldest oak coursing through his veins. They camped that night in a small clearing, surrounded by ancient trees whose roots glowed with faint lunar luminescence. As they shared a simple meal of roasted venison and dark berries, Velmira's thoughts drifted to the elders she had forsaken. Her blood no longer answered their summons. The council's voices were distant echoes. She felt exhilaration and fear entwined in her chest. Beside her, Kaelin sharpened his claws against a stone. His golden eyes reflected the moonlight as he spoke, voice low and certain, "We are more than they taught us to be." The following dawn, rumors spread through the land. Villages trembled as word reached them of two beings wielding power that surpassed both vampire sorcery and lichen might. The shadows warped around Velmira's silhouette, granting her swiftness even in daylight. Kaelin's roar split the dawn. Sky and with it wolves from distant packs answered his call, kneeling before him in tribute. Yet he walked away from them without a backward glance. His loyalty belonged to Velmira now. They journeyed toward the Valley of Ashes, where the vampire elders had hidden a shard of pure moonstone, the last ingredient needed to stabilize the Cryptex Fang's power. The valley lay haunted, winds whispered, of betrayal, and the ground was laced with jagged fragments of glassy rock that cut through flesh and memory. But Velmira and Kaelin advanced, hand in hand, their hearts shielded by the bond that pulsed between them like a living thing. At the valley's heart, they found a pool of silver water lit by both moons. Velmira knelt and retrieved the moonstone shard, its surface etched with runes that glowed faintly under her touch. As she placed it upon the fang's edge, the relic hummed and unleashed a wave of radiant light. The bond within them responded, flaring to life, flesh and spirit entwined. Kaelin's fur turned to midnight silk, and Velmira's pale skin took on an otherworldly sheen. For a moment, neither was wolf nor vampire. Each was the embodiment of their union. But with ascension came envy. A battalion of vampire knights led by Lord Castian, Velmira's uncle, rushed the clearing. Their blades glinted with silver runes, and their eyes burned with righteous fury. At the same moment, a pack of shadowed werewolves, once loyal to Kaelin's lineage, emerged from the forest, snarling as if sensing his altered nature. Trapped between kin of both realms, Velmira and Kaelin stood firm. Without hesitation, Kaelin let loose a howl that shattered the air. The Cryptex Fang in Velmira's hand glowed bright, releasing ripples of energy that knocked knights and wolves alike off their feet. Velmira raised her gaze, lips parting in a silent invocation. Twin beams of lunar light erupted from her eyes, weaving through the clearing, binding friend and foe in chains of silvery magic. Time seemed to slow as she and Kaelin stepped through the storm of light, emerging unscathed at the valley's edge. Once the radiance faded, the assailants lay still, but not dead, returned to their senses. They stared in awe and fear at the apex lovers. Velmira turned to Kaelin, her heart swelling with a fierce sincerity. "We have become what the world feared," she murmured. Kaelin wrapped his arm around her waist, his gaze unwavering. "Then let them fear. We will forge a new path, one where love transcends the bloodlines." Beneath the twin moons, their footsteps led them onward, into a dawn neither had ever known. Deep within the ancient sanctuary, Kaelin found himself bound by shadows that twisted around his form. The chamber's darkness felt alive, pressing in as though intent on consuming him. Every breath was heavier than the last, and with each heartbeat, a cold seeped into his bones. He sensed something slipping away. Not just his strength, but pieces of his very soul. Memories blurred, names of loved ones fading into mist. Somewhere beyond those black tendrils, Velmira's voice called to him, distant and urgent. Outside, Velmira raced through moonlit corridors guided by whispers of Kaelin's fading bond. Her heart pounded with desperation. Each pulse echoed the weakening of their shared connection. She found Tharael in the library's Hall of Echoes, her once trusted friend standing before a grand mirror framed with silver runes. Tharael's eyes glowed with cruel triumph. "She needs to die," Thariel hissed, voice cold as winter's heart. "Only then will you be free to claim your place with the elders." Velmyra raised her hand, voice trembling yet resolute. "You betrayed me," she said softly. Thariel lunged forward, spellfire erupting from her fingertips. Velmyra met it with a shield of moonlit energy, the impact cracking aged stone. The two women clashed in a dance of light and shadow, ancient magics rippling through the hall. Velmyra fought not just for her own survival but for Kaelin's soul, slipping further with each passing moment. At last, Velmyra's resolve kindled a fierce flare of power. She struck the rail with a wave of purifying light that shattered the mirror and scattered the rail's strength. The rail collapsed, defeated though still alive, her betrayal left bare like an open wound. Velmyra did not gloat, her eyes filled with sorrow. There was no pleasure in victory when Kaelin teetered on the edge between life and oblivion. In the heart of the sanctuary, Kaelin's form lay motionless on cold stone. The shadowy bonds had loosed him physically, but his spirit was frayed and formless. Velmyra entered and knelt beside him, gently lifting his face with trembling fingers. She saw the hollowness in his eyes. The bond they had forged had begun to unravel. She knew what must be done, though no elder or text could have prepared her for this moment. Softly, she began to chant the reverent word. A forbidden incantation passed down through secret whispers. Each syllable cost her a fragment of her vampiric essence. Silver blue light gathered around her lips and drifted into Kaelin's form. His chest stirred, and a faint glow returned to his eyes. As the chant reached its pinnacle, Velmyra felt a burning deep in her core. Her immortality slipped, away like smoke in the wind. Her skin grew pale, lines of age tracing along her face. Her fangs retracted, and the cold unlife she had carried all these years melted into her flesh. Kaelin gasped, drawing breath that warmed the air around him. He looked at Velmyra, confusion and gratitude mingling in his gaze. "You gave up all of this for me?" he whispered, voice cracking with emotion. Velmyra smiled through tears, her hand resting on his heart. "I gave up eternity so that you might have another chance," she replied, voice soft as a lullaby. "To feel the warmth we shared, to speak my name inside your mouth one more time." Kaelin reached out, cupping her cheek. His touch was gentle, comforting. "I would give anything for you," he murmured. They held each other beneath the fractured light of the twin moons. At a moment when all seemed lost, their bond endured. Though Velmyra had aged and relinquished her birthright, she did not fade. Her heart still beat with fierce devotion. Kaelin's tears fell upon her face, each drop a promise that their love would endure beyond curses and bloodlines. In that silent expanse, as the moon's glow dimmed, they understood that victory could be more than survival. It could be rebirth. Their story, once on the brink of being torn asunder, had found its true beginning.